Welcome to this tutorial. As you can see, this is what we are going to make. We have a tree and then some bark falls off and then it attaches again from the other side. This is not really a tutorial for total beginners. If you're a little bit more advanced or at least know how to work a little bit inside Blender, then this is great for you. You can probably do this with ease. So let's jump into Blender, and here we have our default cube, which we do not like, so we're going to delete it. Now with Shift A we are going to add a cylinder, and I want to change this a little bit because I want to make sure that the vertices are 36. Now I'm going to scale this up as well, scale Z5, only around the Z axis. Then in the front view I'm going to move this up GZ5, so it is nice on top of this X axis. Okay, now what we want to do is into edit mode, we want to select both the top and the bottom face, X, and delete those faces. Again, I go into the front view and I select just the middle edge here, then click on Ctrl plus 3 times, so I've selected 6 of these faces. Now click on P and then separate selection. So we can essentially delete this other part here because we have the part that we need. This is going to be our bark, so we can rename this as well bark. We need to create some extra edge loops in here so the bark can actually bend. So click on Ctrl R to create an edge loop. While this little yellow edge loop is still showing, you can or scroll up or you can just type in 50, then click on enter, and then you have 50 of these edge loops, which is a that works great for this kind of animation. Now what I want to do is I want to show you the modifier that we need. So go into modifiers, add modifier. This is going to be a simple deform. The simple deform has a twist, bend, taper, and stretch. We are going to use bend. Right now it is bending, but it wants to bend around the origin, and this origin is just not in the right spot. That is why it does not really do what we want it to do. So what we're going to do is go into top, gonna select this bottom edge loop, Shift S, and then the cursor to select it. So now our cursor is in the middle of the selected part, and we go out of the top, go into object mode, which we're in now, Shift A, and then just add an empty plane axis. So now go back to your bark and you can select here an object, which is going to be this empty. So what you're doing here is you're essentially using the origin of this empty instead of the origin of the object itself. You could of course move this object as well, but I did that before, and later on in the animation you will get a few problems. That is why I do it like this. So now our bark bends the way that we want it to bend. Of course it needs to go the other way, but you can easily do this in the deform section here. And yeah, that's kind of what we were looking for. If you put it at 0, we just have our normal tree, and then it will of course go to -50 somewhere. Awesome. So I want to also make sure that we have a solidify modifier in here. So click on solidify, and we can make this a bit more solid. Choose a thickness, 0.13 might be good, 0.12 also, it doesn't really matter. Choose a certain thickness that you like. Now I like to click on W and make it shade smooth. And you can see that it does make it smooth, but we do get some shading artifacts here and here because those edges should be sharp. Go into your object data properties, normals, and then auto smooth, turn it on. And here we have a very nice result. What I want to do here is I want multiple of these. Before I'm actually going to duplicate these, I will apply the solidify modifier and then UV unwrap this model. So I'm going to select this, and this edge loop, Ctrl E, mark seam, because this part is going to be the most important one, and then just every single one of these edges as well. So these, and the fourth one will be down here. Ctrl E, mark seam. Very, very easy. Why do I do this now? Well, if I duplicate this, which we need to do, you can see that the duplicate also has the seams. so we don't have to UV unwrap it 2 times. So, how are we going to duplicate this in a circular manner? It's going to be super simple. Click on Shift C to make sure your 3D cursor snaps back to the middle. Then click on Shift A to create a empty. We have another one here. And then select the bark, and we are going to use the array modifier. So normally an array modifier just arrays next to it, right? With the relative offset and also the constant offset. But now we're gonna choose the object offset. So make sure you turn off the relative and a constant. Turn on the object offset and select the empty we've just created. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure we have a count of 6 and then rotate this empty around the z-axis for 60 degrees. You can see it does not really work the way that I want it to work because it just goes smaller and smaller. So I'm going to select my empty and my bark, click on Ctrl A and apply all transforms. Now I of course need to rotate it again because I applied the transform, so rotate Z 60, and here we have duplicated our bark. So if you select this, you can see that if we go up or down in count, that we get the amount of bark that we need. So we want 6, that's it. Now I can still use my deform, and you can see what this does. Amazing. That's like literally what we want. The problem is we need these parts to be separate from each other, because if I now just UV unwrap this and show you the material, then you will see that we get seams in between all of these bits, and it will not look like one solid tree. Let's actually give this some materials. Go to shading, click on new, can rename this to bark, and add an image texture. Color goes into the base color, and we're going to open our bark texture. The download link is down below and it's free, so don't worry. And you can just select this one, and you will see here that it doesn't look too bad, but it essentially is duplicated over and over, as you can see here by this little knot in here, right? We don't want that. We want this whole texture that we have. So if I go to texture paint, actually, you can see the whole texture that we have, right? We want this texture. We don't want the, half of this texture, only this part showing. So how do we do that? Well, it is going to take a little bit of time, which is annoying, but I think it is worth it for sure. What we're going to do is we're going to actually apply the array modifier. And now you can see that we have all of these arrays are inside of each other. And you want to separate them piece by piece. So if you select the middle edge loop here, click on Ctrl+, you will see that everything will be selected from this bark piece. Click on P and then selection. We're going to do this for each and every one of these sections. And now I want to UV unwrap them. So I am going to UV editing. I will select all of these parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go into edit mode. Click A to select everything, U, and unwrap. So here you can see that everything is unwrapped. So to make sure that the textures actually fit, we need to look at what our texture map looks like. So if we look here, we can see that these parts are actually the insides, and these parts are the ones that need to fill up this whole canvas, for instance. So how do we do this? Well, what I like to do is I like to select this bottom right vertex, then Shift S, cursor to selected, and here in pivot point I want to make sure my pivot point is to the 2D cursor. This is not a 3D cursor, this is called a 2D cursor, because this is a 2D space, of course. Now I like to select all of these vertices. Then if I scale it up, you will see that I can just scale up, but this part will stay wherever it is. That is why I put my 3D cursor or 2D cursor there. And I'm gonna scale it up until I am at the very end here. because now our texture essentially is just seamless. It doesn't really matter that the top is over here, we just need to make sure that it is fitting in this axis here. So, is it good though? Well, maybe not, because sometimes these parts, let's go to the first part here, where is it? Are not next to each other. So if we look here at the texture map, we can see that this one should be here, right? So if I go here, but you can see that it is all the way over there. So it is not really aligned well. As you can also see in this texture, it just like snaps over to another color. So how do we change this? Well, this is going to be a little bit annoying, and but it is kind of the only way that I found to do this. So what I did is I just selected both these, and then make sure I just select the wrong one in the 2D section and just move it to the right. So move it around the x-axis, GX, and then just move it as close to each other as you can. And now these two parts are seamless, as you can see, right? So now I select those two, and then this one is last, and you can see that also this one is very far away. So I'm going to select this part, and then move it around the x-axis. It is as simple as that. You're gonna do this for every single one of them. Some of them, like this one, is kind of covered by the other ones. So what you want to do is just select everything and then move this a little bit out of the way, and then select the other ones so you can focus upon this part here. I know that these kinds of like actions make this tutorial way longer, but you can also just use a different material. If you just do like only silver or something like that, you don't really need to do this. But this texture is quite defined, so we really need to do this. And for this other part here, I'll make this a bit bigger as well, just so they match up and have the same size. And it doesn't have to be inside here, so that's no problem. So now you can see that our tree is all the way around perfect the way that we want it. So what do we need to do now? Well, we need a nice tree in here. So I'm going to just add another cylinder. We're going to use the same as before, so scale Z5, GZ5. It just needs to be a bit smaller, so scale Shift Z, and around here will be great. This is just to show us where the tree essentially is, so just rename this as tree. And if we animate our tree bit here, you can see that we are showing our tree underneath. Okay, so here's our bark. Very, very cool. Now, if you select the bark that we created as first, you can change this angle, and it just works great. The problem is, if we're gonna select another bark here, and just to change this angle, it actually wants to join this one, because they're both using the same empty, right? So the origin is not really good, because it should bend the other way. So how do we change this? Well, it is actually quite simple. The only thing you need to do is make sure your 3D cursor is in the middle, then change your pivot point here to 3D cursor, and we are going to duplicate this empty. Okay, so the empty here that we used as first, and we can rename this empty as empty bark, maybe that helps. And then we're gonna duplicate it, rotate Z 60 degrees. Because we also did that with these duplicates, right? So with these, this arrow modifier for the bark. We're gonna do this a few more times, so Shift D, rotate Z 60 degrees, Shift D, rotate Z 60. Until you did every single one of them. So right now we should have 6 of these barks. So what you're going to do now is we'll keep this one at -50 just to see which one is good. Then this one is going to be in -50. And you can see that this one is not good. So we are going to change the origin here to the empty that we've just given it. And that's it. So same one for this one, angle at -50, then change this empty to the empty that is underneath it. Bam. This one as well, -50, delete this empty and change it to the empty underneath. And here you can see it is working as intended, and this is all that we wanted, right? So, perfect. So let's start animating right now. Go to animation, and here we can start animating. It's going to be quite simple, but there have to be a few steps which you have to think about a little bit. The first thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that everything is at 0 because we want our tree to be just a normal tree stump in the beginning. So, I know a little trick though, and you only have to do one of these barks. Okay, so you can just hide off all the other ones, just start with the one that is in the front view. So, we're going to select this, and we're going to make sure our angle is at 0, right click, insert keyframe. Then at around key 40, we're going to do -50, right click, insert keyframe. So you can also start to think about how many frames you want this to be. Let's just do 160 for right now. We might change it in the future. If you play this, you will see that now it will start to open up from frame 1 till frame 40. Very cool. We don't only want it to open up, we actually also want it to fall off, right? What I did here is I wanted to land underneath the camera. But our camera is not set up yet, so let's go into 0, which is the camera view. Then select this, go into view, and then lock camera to view. Going to move this somewhere where the front view would be, somewhere here. But now I need to select the camera, of course, go to item, and then put it in its place with all the right rotations. Just so it's nice and straight in front of it. This seems to be okay. You don't have to be too specific with this, but now we at least have something to go upon. Go into view and then make sure your lock camera to view is off, so we can't really move it anymore. And what we want to do now is, with this animation, because this is going to bend and then fall down, we want to make sure it goes underneath our camera so we cannot see these bark bits anymore. How do we do this though? Well, it's going to be quite simple. Because we have an empty here, which we do not really have any use for anymore, we can actually use it for something. What we're going to do is we're going to select every single one of these bark empties, then select the middle empty, which is not in use anymore, but we can use it now. So then click on Ctrl P and set parent to that middle empty. Now, if I move this empty, you can see that everything just falls down. I just move it around the Z-axis down. See how simple that is? This frame is quite important because right here everything is nicely connected to the bottom. So what I want to do at frame 1, I want to click on I and then location. Now at around frame 160, I want to make sure this one is on top of here. So GZ10, and it is totally on top, as you can see. And now I and then location. So now at least we have these two frames which are very important. The bottom frame and the top frame. Now what I like to do is I want them to fall off, right? So around frame, let's say frame 60, they should be all the way off. So at frame 60 I want them to fall down here and then until I cannot see them anymore in my camera. So I location. So now you will see that from 0 fall down, and then they're out of the camera. At around half of this whole animation, so frame 80, I want to make sure these are, instead of like down here, they will be up here. How do I do that? It's also very simple. The only thing that we need to do here is select this frame that we just created, frame 60, Ctrl C to copy it, and then Ctrl V to duplicate it. Now at frame 81, so go one frame up, we're just gonna move this till it's all the way on top and we cannot see it on the camera on the top. then I, and then also insert keyframe. So between these two, 80 and 81, they will just snap to the other place. We cannot see them in a camera, so it will not look weird. But yeah, that is how we animate this. And then from there on, it will fall down, as you can see here, and it will do its thing. But if we want to keep this a little bit symmetrical, we of course need to create a frame around 20 frames away here. So at the frame 100, we're gonna duplicate this last frame, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and then only from frame 100, these will start to fall down, right? It's just the same as here. And this is how we keep some symmetry in our animation. So go down, and then we'll just slowly start to combine. The difference here though is we don't really have an animation for this part here at the end. So if we hide these now, bam, 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 and just focus upon this bark, we can see that it starts to open, fall off, and then it starts to close, but it will never really close because we didn't do this part of the animation, right? This simple deform animation on the end. So what do we need to do? Well, at the frame 160, we need to make sure it is 0 degrees, insert keyframe, and 40 frames before this, so at frame 120, we need to make sure this is minus 50, insert keyframe. So now what will happen is if we play it, it will fall off, and then just nice be put back, and that's it. So now it's just a nice looping animation, as you can see. Just falls off, and then this will be put back on. Very, very easy, very simple. But we need to make sure this also happens to all of these other parts here, right? How do we do this? It is not hard at all, actually. We are just gonna select each and every single one of them, then the one with the right animation as last, Ctrl L, and then animation data. So now what will happen is they will fall, and then they will be put back all in the same fashion, and that is great. And this is essentially how this animation is made. You can change whatever you want, and you can add as many animations in here to make it even more interesting. But that's totally up to you. I think this tutorial already takes way too long if we go way into depth into this. So let's go to the shading, and then we can finish this off. If we look at the textures that we have here, we of course got this diffuse. We also want a normal, specular, and the roughness. And they're very simple. You can just duplicate this image texture, then open the specular, color goes into the specular, and then of course the specularity is like a non-color data, so change the sRGB to non-color. Then just duplicate it over again. This is going to be the roughness map, color goes into the roughness, and then as last we have our normal map. Make sure this one is also non-color, by the way, and the normal map should also be non-color. So here normal, and it changes for some reason, but put it to non-color. A normal map needs a node in between it to actually work, so a normal map node, color goes into color, then normal goes into the normal, and that is essentially it for this material. And then for this inner part here, I actually deleted the top and the bottom face as well. X face, and then just create a new material, which is just a tree. And yeah, it's exactly the same story here, image texture, but then we use this plywood material. So plywood, let's look where the grains actually go. I don't like where the grains go, I like them to go up and down. Just use a texture coordinate node and a mapping node. Mapping, let's do the UVs, vector goes into here, and then I'm gonna rotate, let's look which axis it is, Z-axis actually, to 90 degrees, and that is more like it. And then do the same for these other ones. So we have a roughness map in here, roughness, make sure that vector also goes in here, roughness, non-color data, and as last, of course, a normal map. Also this one needs to be connected. Non-color, and we need a normal map node in between here. And that is essentially it. So this is our animation, as you can see. It's very, very simple, but still quite effective. The lighting and all that stuff, I think you guys can figure it out in this case. The textures are, of course, in the download file, as I already told you guys. And that is it. So I hope you guys learned from this. I hope you guys liked this. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about it. And I'll see you guys in the next one.